Welcome back to the Green Lectionary Podcast, a production of Creation Justice Ministries. The Green Lectionary is a conversation on Scripture through the lens of creation justice. My name is Derek Weston, and today we will be looking at a text for August 2nd, Proper 13 of Ordinary Time. For the summer, we've been focusing on texts from Ordinary Time, the Sundays that fall between the better-known liturgical seasons. My guest today is Pamela Dolan. The Very Reverend Pamela Dolan is the Rector of the Episcopal Church of St. Martin in Davis, California, and the author of Contemplative Gardening. Before we begin, I'm happy to announce that this year the Green Lectionary podcast will be a part of the God Pods at Theology Beer Camp. Theology Beer Camp is a unique 3-day experience for theology nerds and church outcasts. I had the pleasure of attending last year and got to hear a slate of amazing speakers and have excellent conversations about the current and future state of the church, all while enjoying some excellent beers. Theology Beer Camp will be taking place at Pine Ridge Presbyterian Church in Kansas City, Missouri from October 8th to 10th. Hope to see you there. You can learn more at theologybeer.camp. Join us now as we look at Matthew 14 through the lens of creation justice. Hello, welcome back to the Green Lectionary. It's good to have you on.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I realized that in the previous times that we've had you on the show, we have not talked about your congregation and the work that you all are doing around your own creation journey. So tell us a little about your church.
Yeah. Well, I've been here I'm at the Church of St. Martin in Davis, California. We're an Episcopal congregation, and we're in the Diocese of Northern California, which, it's just the complicated way that Episcopal churches are organized. There is a Diocese of California. You would think we'd be part of that. We're not, but we're all friends. Okay. So we are... St. Martin's is located in Davis, which is a university town. And that was definitely one of the things that really interested me when I first heard that this position was open. I was an academic for a while before I was ordained, so I kind of love that college town vibe. But the other thing was that I had started becoming very involved in creation care at my last church. That's where I started a big garden and got into gardening and doing that work as part of our ministry. And I knew that Davis had a strong environmental awareness, that there were a lot of people both on campus and in town who were involved with sustainable agriculture and just would have a level of expertise in some of those areas that was really appealing to me. So when I got to St. Martin's, one of the first things that I noticed was, so if you're not familiar with this area, we're not too far from Sacramento. We're not very far from the Central Valley. So we're in a hot inland part of California. It's pretty dry most of the year. And our biggest weather issue is the heat. And so I got here and immediately noticed this very nice kind of carport in part of the parking lot. And somebody had to actually point out to me, those are solar panels. So there's an array of solar panels over a portion of our carport or of our parking lot before I even, got here. I was like, that's intriguing. So one of the things that has been just like so rewarding about working here is that by the time I got here, they were well on their way to being able to provide all the energy they needed through solar power. So we took the plunge a couple of years into my time as a rector and said, let's make it all the way. Let's become carbon neutral, essentially. And I had never even thought about that as work that a church could do. But they had committed over several years. It really ended up being more than a decade that it took to go from everything being done conventionally to everything being green. And, we're in a great place to use solar, obviously, because it is hot and sunny most of the year. And so we just needed one more solar array after I got here to be producing the energy that we needed. And then some other adaptations. So it was in 2021 that we officially, through Interfaith Power and Light, were certified as carbon neutral. And, we just kind of plugged away at it. It was taking the old HVAC system, and we got really lucky. It failed during Lent one time when it was, by our standards, cold, and people weren't happy with that. But it was the perfect opportunity to say, hey, if we're going to replace that, why don't we replace it with heat pumps? Why don't we just like figure out what in our infrastructure we can change to a greener option? And little by little we did. And so it was amazing we were still in the pandemic. Things were, I think we were allowed in church if we were 6 feet apart and wore masks. And it was kind of at that stage. But when we got the certification, we had the bishop come out. We had her, we got a scissors lift. Do you know what that is, like, for a building site? And we raised her up, so she was up the solar panels on the roof, and she blessed them, and it was amazing. So yeah, so we've gone through this. I tell people when they ask me about it, people, first of all, I think are surprised that there's such a thing as carbon neutral or zero carbon churches. There's different language that we can talk about, but I tell people don't do it the way we did it because it took a really long time and was expensive. And there are now really sort of more guides out there, more people who are doing it. We have some ways that we try to sort of tell our story and reach out, and we'll talk to people who have questions. A couple of years ago, I said there are a lot of incentives and government programs to help you pay for it. That's not so true anymore. So that's another wrinkle that we're dealing with. But it is still possible. And there are a lot of churches working on it. And I think it's kind of this undertold story that a church can make choices that have a huge environmental impact. I mean, over the years, thinking about what we have saved in terms of the carbon we're not burning, but also we've saved money. People want to hear that part of the story too, that we have very, very minor utility bills at this point. I could keep talking about this, but I'm going to pause there.
Well, I mean, I love to hear all of this, and I'm wondering how it's affected sort of the church's view of itself and the ways that they think about how they're showing up in the community and things of that nature.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely, it's a nice boost for a church to reach a goal like that and to be acknowledged for it. So that was especially that it happened during the pandemic, when churches needed all the kind of morale boosters they could get.
Yeah.
But also then I think it creates, it's one of those virtuous cycles. So then a couple years after we were certified and things were, getting busy again in church, I said, we've got to think about what else we can do, because it's really easy to say, oh, we've achieved this big goal, and then just want to tell everybody about it. And, then you think you're done. And so we really are continuing to think about I mean, first of all, there is telling the story, which I think, like a lot of Episcopal churches, maybe a lot of churches in different denominations, we're not always that good at. We're a little shy. We don't like to evangelize. We don't want to toot our own horn, so we've had to work with some of that and try to frame it in such a way that we think of ourselves as a resource. And, so it's just, if we can help somebody else, like I said, maybe not make it as hard as it was for us, we want to be there for that. It is actually a good evangelism tool. Besides saving money, when a church comes to me and they want to talk about it, we do have a banner out front that says a zero carbon church, and people are interested. People are curious. They're like, what does that even mean? And how is that even possible? And so that creates some great conversations with people who might not otherwise be that interested in their local Episcopal church. And then you start thinking about, okay, it has freed up some money. could we think about that as an opportunity to again answer this question of like, what else can we do? So we certainly have been working on our landscaping, figuring out how do we use less water? How do we do more native plantings, pollinators, those kinds of things. We actually have a baptismal pool, not just a font, which is again kind of unusual. We do full immersion baptisms, which I love, but you're using a lot of water for that. And so it's set up in such a way that when the pool gets emptied out after each baptism, it goes into a swale, a bioswale. So,
Hmm.
it's thinking about stuff like that we have a little more space for because we've already figured out the one big piece that a lot of churches struggle with of the energy piece of it and the utility piece of it. And so then you have some capacity to be thinking in other ways. We also toward the end of the pandemic did a 3-year program that we called Seeds of Justice, where we decided it was really important to understand the land that we're on. So we brought in people to talk about the history, especially the racialized history of the land. So we brought in a lot of Native speakers, people from, as I said, we're close to a university. So we had people from the Native American Studies department and things like that, and talked about traditional ecological knowledge. So we just said, okay, if you don't know the land where you live, work, and worship, are you really doing environmental work? It's about more than just kind of the energy in, energy out, kind of that, very mechanistic model that I think we have in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, so we just keep trying. We just keep looking for new things to do.
I love that. I love that. And I just so appreciate that because you're absolutely right that so many churches will do, whether it's solar panels or some big public gesture, kind of go, aha, we did it, we arrived. Instead of thinking about, okay, that was a step, and how do we keep the conversation going? How do we
Yeah.
add? How are we more faithful to our land? And I love that you're continuing to ask that question.
Yeah. And it turns out that I mean, you know this from the work you do. You can look at it as kind of this chore or like this obligation. And I do think it's important for people to take that responsibility to the earth really seriously. Obviously, that's so important to me. And I think if you can try to just switch your, viewpoint a little bit over and think, this is this is a chance to be creative. This is a chance to do things that maybe not every other church is doing, and maybe they didn't teach you in seminary. And that's actually really cool. And I've also found that in almost from the garden that I did in St. Louis to this work here, a lot of it is lay driven. A lot of the expertise is not coming from the clergy, or at least it's not coming from me. And that's really great. Like that, I think that's in and of itself revitalizing to a church, or vitalizing, maybe,
Yeah.
that it doesn't have to be the pastor, someone coming in with the big idea. We're learning from people who are doing so much of this work in their own homes. We have so many great gardeners, people who are working with native plants, and they don't need me to go look it up in a book, or, they're already doing it. And so they're bringing that expertise here. We bless bikes every year so that we're trying to get more people to, find ways to get to church, not in their cars if possible. And, it's really just sort of looking at what a lot of people in our community are already doing. How do we bring that to church? How do we bless it, essentially? How do we say, like, this is good stuff happening here? We want to encourage it, and we want to show that it's not disconnected from your faith life.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
I love that. I love that. That's so good. I love hearing stories like that. So I'm just grateful for you sharing the story of your church's journey, because I think it's really helpful for other congregations to hear things like that and to think about, oh, we have those kinds of resources in our community as well. And we can be
Yeah.
tapping into those.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's shift gears here a little bit, and we're going to be talking about Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 to 21. It's a story that lots of folks know, and I think there's a lot we can do with it.
Mhm.
So, now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away, so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass, taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish. He looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples. The disciples gave them to the crowds, and all ate and were filled, and they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Because, women and children weren't afterthought. Where is creation in this passage?
Well, and the women and children.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll talk about the people who are a part of creation and are really important in this story. I I mean, just to start off with, there's the locale. And so, this idea of Jesus withdrawing to a deserted place, wanting to be by himself, but that didn't work out. It's funny, I was thinking, I'm often the one trying to tell people that you don't have to go away somewhere to experience nature. That's a big part of my message to people is like, go to your backyard, go, at church, wherever you are, you can experience creation. So I was like, Jesus, why did you want to go someplace special? You're like, making me change my mind about this. But we all know that feeling, I think, of when the crowds get too much, when there's, when too much happening and you wanna go somewhere that's apart and that's quiet. And so I didn't actually look up like that word deserted place, but I think we can all imagine for ourselves what a deserted place would be that we would want to withdraw to, so we've got whatever this deserted place is. We've got the the water. So he's going in a boat. He's going ashore. So we know that even though it didn't end up being deserted because all the people follow him. We've got this. We've got something that I imagine to be, I hope, lovely, uh, and we do hear that there's grass there. So I think the place is a really important way to enter into the creation part of this story. And I really love working with people on imagining places that are important. So I think there could be some really fun things you do with that, either if you're preaching or if you're just, talking with people about this passage, thinking about it for yourself. Maybe thinking about that sense of place, and where do you go when you're in a situation like Jesus is in, where he is looking for that set apart time. So the locale, that's obviously a really important part of creation here. And then we have fish. We have loaves, which are both, fruit of the vine and work of human hands. It's, I think, indicative in some way of the way we work with creation to be fed. I mean, that is probably the thing that people think of when they think of this story, right? That everybody is fed. And it's a reminder that we can't do that without creation. It's, in this case, it's pretty obvious. If you go and get fish,
Mhm.
that's sort of that like unfiltered, there's not a lot of, but when you step back from that, you think, well, there is no way to eat without
Mhm.
engaging with creation. We just forget that because we don't have to do it so directly. So those are kind of the first things that come to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to go back to your first point because I think it's really, it's easy to jump to the loaves and the fish
Mm-hmm.
and not think about the place both as a context and as a character.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's missing here is the beginning. Because it says, the very first verse is, now when Jesus heard this, well, what's he hearing? He's hearing about the death of John the Baptist. He's
Right.
hearing about his friend, his cousin, his colleague, as close to a colleague as Jesus could have, has been executed. And so the need to be in nature, in a deserted place, surrounded by creation, is kind of heightened because he's grieving, right? It's not just wanting to get away from the crowds, that's part of it, but like he's grieving, he's hurting.
Yeah.
He's in this
Mm-hmm.
space where like that connection to nature,
Mm-hmm.
he's seeking it out for his soul,
Mm-hmm.
in a way. Like I mean, it feels really, to me, that feels really relatable, right? That feels like one of the things that we hear over and over again in research and study is like the place where people feel most connected to God, spirituality, whatever they want to call it, is outside. It's in
Right.
nature.
Right.
And Jesus is needing this like touch grass moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because he's sad, he's hurting, he's maybe even reevaluating, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
He's absolutely grieving, and the consequences of the kind of work that he's doing must have become really clear to him.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
the stakes have suddenly gotten really high.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that just feels, I don't know, just thinking about
Hmm.
the world we live in, and where it feels like the stakes of things are high and everything
Very.
feels dire. The need to withdraw
Yeah.
to, even if it's not a far off deserted place, but that those places where all we have around us is creation.
Yeah.
Um,
It
until
really,
those needy people.
but it really humanizes Jesus, I think is what you're saying. Like we can all relate to that feeling of grief, overwhelm, whatever it is, where we're like, I just need a minute outside. I just need to be able to go out and be be in touch with that spirit. I My dad died last fall, and
Mm,
uh, it changes your whole world when you lose a parent, when you lose anyone that you're really close to. My dad and I were super, super close. And I think I know something about it's kind of part of my job, about grieving and how to take care of yourself and things like that. And I've been going through the different, the first Christmas, this and that. Well, about a month ago, I had the opportunity to what I think of as go home. I grew up mostly in Hawaii, and my high school was having a big reunion, or I was having a big reunion, 40th high school reunion. So I was back in Hawaii, and I had not been for over a decade.
mm,
And so I flew I actually flew to Kona. I grew up on Oahu, but my flight took me through Kona, and so I had to get off at the airport there. And if you've ever been to the Kona airport, which I don't think I had been before, it's all outside.
mm.
And literally stepping off the plane, my eyes filled with tears because it smelled like Hawaii. I
Mm,
mean, it was like a body thing, this deep sense memory. And I was just not prepared. I mean, I was excited about going home. I was excited about the reunion. I was, all those things, but I didn't think about what I would smell when I stepped off the plane. And the whole time I was there, it was another experience of really thinking about my dad and really thinking about that loss and how my family has changed and and that places that were there are not there anymore. And then some places that I loved are still there and are still very much the same. And, there's so much that place holds for us. And I don't know that I have spent enough time thinking about how that was true for Jesus too.
Mm,
Have been we think about the people that he loved. We know about people that he was, we think about the Lazarus story and Mary and Martha and, obviously his relationships with different disciples that seem sometimes quite complicated. uh, but, but obviously also filled with love and affection, but
mhm,
what about the places?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so often when we encounter little details like this, it's just like, well, he went off to a deserted place, but he probably went off to a deserted place that he loved, right?
Right.
Like a place that he knew was a place that was a place of peace for him, a place of solace for him, a place where he could recharge or reflect or do whatever healing thing he needed to do.
Absolutely.
Because, and I think about this because the first thing that happens, once he realizes that he's not going to get to be by himself, is that he starts healing. And like this place that is maybe healing for him, he decides, I'm going to make this healing for others.
Mm.
And I'm sure you've had this experience of beautiful places that you love, that you cherish, and then like bringing someone to that space of
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I need you to feel the magic of this space, of like whether it's, I mean, for me, it's almost always by water. It's almost always like near an ocean of like, I need you to experience this the way that I'm experiencing it because it's healing for me and I think it's going to be healing for you. Or, yeah, yeah,
And and it's like that person you're sharing it with, it is really sharing a part of yourself. So it is
yeah.
really like you will know me better
Mhm.
if you know this place.
Yeah.
And even though Jesus didn't invite the people into the I love that idea that maybe he was like, "Okay, but you're here, so let's experience this together. Let's experience this healing and what can come from here." I really like that. I appreciate that insight. The the I think it speaks there's a lot about compassion in this
Mhm.
text, and I think it maybe starts there much sooner than it's named,
Mm.
that it's something about it's just wanting to connect. It's yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so I mean, let's kind of take that into the next question of thinking about like what does this say about creation and its ability? Think about the ways that we interact with the more than human world, the non-human world. Like, what does it say about creation's ability to connect us?
Mm. Yeah. I think there's something in here that suggests to me that the human and the non-human world I don't know, this might be overstating it. I was gonna say maybe at least for Christians can meet in Jesus.
Mm. Hmm.
That I'm trying to be careful because it's like, how much am I reading my own feelings and desires? Like, we're taught not to do that, but I think with all the recent rereadings from a more agrarian spirit, I think it's okay to go out on a limb a little bit, and I certainly see Jesus as someone who was so connected to creation. I mean, the firstborn of all creation. It's even, it even goes back into some of our ancient language. So somehow it makes sense that he would be part of this, how the human and the more than human or the non-human world come together in creation. That, he's there, the people are there. Maybe something about his connection to the place was what led him into that healing. He had compassion on them because he was Jesus, but also maybe because this the setting, the context, as you were, I think, suggesting before. And then I think there's a lot in this. I mean, I don't want to push too soon into the loaves and fishes, like you said, but
Go for
it points us to that is one of the primary ways that humanity and creation are. I mean, again, I always think of humanity as part of creation, but
it.
that we need. I mean, it's the one of the absolute primary ways that we need the other parts of creation is to be able to survive food wise, and also that we work with.
Mhm.
We might even have talked about this a little bit when I was talking about gardening with you one time, but it's one of the great things about gardening is that you get to be kind of a part of the process, so it's not looking at nature out there. It's like, oh no, like I'm tending. I'm frustrated. You're, you're working with in a creative and generative way. And even though that process isn't shown here in this story, the results of that are here. Fish that somebody had to go out and catch, grain becoming, these loaves of bread that feed the people. And then there are all those layers to that. So then it's like the disciples notice that the people are hungry, but their answer is like, so let's tell them to go away, which is one answer. It's one
Mhm.
possibility.
Mhm.
Just send them off. And it's Jesus saying, no, we have what we need. We can give them something to eat.
Yeah.
And that attitude that we have what we need, we, meaning the non-human and the human together, the big we have what we need. We have enough. That feels very Jesus to me. That feels,
Yeah.
that feels like church. That's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, let's not send people away. Let's figure out what we have right here.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. And that's, hearing the story again this time, that's absolutely how I felt reading that. It's like there's and like I so often we throw the disciples under the bus. And like I don't want to throw the disciples under the bus here. Like they noticed that people were hungry and like let's give them some points for that. like like that was their compassion coming through. It was like, oh wow, like it's getting late. People are hungry. And we at least at the moment are feeling we don't have what we need to tend to a need.
Mhm.
And there is this sense of that maybe this is maybe me going too far, but I'll go there anyway.
Yeah.
Like there's a sense of like, let's send them back to commerce. Let's send
Mm,
them back to the marketplace. Let's send them back to the economy.
mhm.
And Jesus is kind of pointing them back to like, there's an economy here.
Yeah.
There is, you know, the bounty of bread and the bounty of fish. And we have what we need here to care for ourselves more so than we even imagine. And again, I think like as you were saying, like it's bread, it's grain worked with human hands. Uh, for that fish to have been edible,
Mhm.
also had to have been worked with human hands, either salting or cooking or something. Like
Yeah.
there's still the interplay of the gifts of creation and the ingenuity,
Mhm.
creativity of humanity, like coming together to meet the community's needs. And
Yeah.
like, there's something really beautiful about that to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I do not think you're going too far. I mean, I think there's ample evidence that the marketplace is not where Jesus is at. That's not that's not his go-to for how you care for people. And sense of creating I was going to say creating our own economy, but actually it's an economy that's already in place. We don't have
Mm,
to, it's there for us. It's part of the way God created the world. If we can figure out how to tap into it equitably and with a sense of justice and fairness and in this case abundance, and that trust. I'm always just that's something that always blows me away. Maybe that says something about me, but the level of trust that Jesus shows that we're going to have enough.
mm,
Yeah, 5 loaves and 2 fishes doesn't sound like very much, but you know what? We'll make it work. And I am somebody who goes along with the miraculous.
mm.
I don't need to try to say that there's a lot more bread tucked away in people's, they just didn't want to share and then they got, I don't want to rationalize this too much. I want to just enjoy it and
Mm,
think I, I don't need to know how exactly
mm,
it happened, but there was something miraculous going on that what appeared to be so little turned out to be enough when it was shared, turned out to be more than enough. And and what a beautiful thing to remind us kind of to turn not inward in a way that's like against the world, but inward to the community and to the local setting to say, well, what's already here? What
mm,
what do we actually have right here with us that
mm,
might turn out to be the answer, the resource that we need, the thing that's going to feed us. And yeah, yeah, I really like that.
mm. And I'm so glad you said that because, I've been the person who has in some ways thought of like in some ways taking the miracle out of it. Right. But there is something about leaving the miracle in that I think is, how often are we blind to the abundance that's around
Mhm.
us? How often are we blind to the miracle of abundance that like things just are more than what we think they are? That things just really are like we're so afraid of running out. We're so scared of there not being enough. And like we
Yeah,
really are blind to the miracle of abundance.
yeah.
And what's in our community, and like, I mean, this is feels absolutely like connected to thinking about a church that is, space that gets a whole lot of sun and thinking about, boy, what do we do with that?
No, it's true. I mean, I think you and I have both probably done work around asset-based community development.
Mm.
This is a great story to tell because first you figure out what you have and then sort of what you do with it. But I also like what you said earlier about not throwing the disciples under the bus and not throwing ourselves under the bus
Mhm.
we're so enmeshed in this system that tells us that there isn't enough
Yeah.
and and that we have to go into the marketplace. We have to always be buying and consuming and competing and it's really hard to step away from that. I think it's a really Jesus thing to do to step away from
Mhm.
it. I think this is just one of, many, many, many illustrations of like what is another way? What is another path? How do we feed each other? Um,
Mm.
it occurred to me actually to go back to the first question about where is creation. There's also creation in people getting hungry, in people getting tired.
Mhm.
Um, we are creatures, and we are creatures with needs and with limits, and our bodies dictate so much. Imagine, we are like, oh, if we saw Jesus in the flesh, like, oh, but what if you've been there a lot of hours and where it's cold and you're tired and you're hungry? Like, the best preacher in the world, the best healer, Jesus himself, like, at some point, you still need to go to bed. You still
Yeah.
need to have like, I love thinking about that. I love because we have so spiritualized these stories, and to me they're so human.
Mhm.
And I mean, the fact that people would even follow him that far is incredible. Like,
Yeah,
obviously, there's something huge going on in the way he touched people. But even with that, there are limits.
yeah,
Yeah, people need
yeah,
dinner. People need
yeah,
bread. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. It's true. It's like there's always going to be human need, and again, to the disciples' credit, right? They're attuned to that because they're probably feeling it themselves, right? They're probably not just like it probably might want to be one of those things where it's like the crowd is hungry.
some people are saying
Some people are saying that they could really go for something to eat
use it
right
right.
now.
Yeah. We never hear that in church.
Yeah,
We never
never,
people think.
never, never. So where is there a call to action for the church? Where's there a call to action for the preacher here? Like, I feel like there's a lot of, I mean, this is one of the reasons that this is one of the best known stories is because it's so preachable.
Mhm, mhm.
but, but, kind of thinking about all the things that we've said and thinking about the context of, people who are wanting to bring creation into their preaching more. Where's there
Yeah,
a call to action for the church here?
yeah. Well, I mean, maybe to go back to the idea of paying attention to place, which is things we've already talked about, but especially thinking of it in terms of call to action for the church. I don't think most churches, and I don't know every church. I could be wrong, but I don't hear a lot about people really talking about place, the role of place in their ministry. So maybe just as a first step is sort of thinking about if we can begin to see where place plays such a big role for Jesus,
Mm,
then that suggests that's something that should also be important to us. And what does that look like in your church context? Do you know the basics of both sort of the like I'm trying to think of the right word. The agricultural isn't quite the right word, but like, do you know the place at sort of a physical, basic level? Do you know the weather because you live in it, but do you really understand the climate you're in, the things that are changing? It's like I think a lot of times when a pastor goes to a new church, they learn a lot of demographic information. They might learn a little bit about the history of the neighborhood or the building, but not some of that deeper history and like who's lived on the land before you and how did the building get built and so place. I think there are lots of ways you can go with that, but not to ignore that aspect of church life that it happens somewhere.
mm,
It just that sounds so obvious, but I don't know that we always really think about it that way. And then, I'd love to see people explore their own history of place and places
mhm,
that, to have people think about where would you go if you were in, or where do you go when you're in a situation like Jesus? So encourage people to really, I think, honor those places that give us back so much. I think that's a kind of an action. It's not so obvious, but it is important. I've thought about something we haven't really done here much, but sometimes getting the church outside,
mm,
not just we have like, St. Francis Day out on the lawn. I mean, which is great and I love it. And what about a baptism in our local creek or something like, what's the, like, how do you take that even a little bit further? So that's one kind of call to action. The other thing is this collaborative, co-creative spirit that's in this story. Everything you said about, a fish doesn't come out of the water ready to eat. Well, first of all, it's not always easy to get out of the water. A
There's
fish
that.
isn't as easy as it sometimes sounds. but then you gotta gut it and scale it and do all those other things. There's some hidden work in here, and then some not so hidden work where, Jesus doesn't say, oh, well, let's just, he doesn't do sort of a magic trick and everybody gets their own little meal and goes home. The disciples have to like do something,
Hmm.
that if sending them out to, it's not an individualistic, Jesus will give you your dinner and then off you go. It's like, no, we're all going to work together on this problem and figure it out and and use the resources that we have. So that's also, I mean, it's not a very specific call to action, but it's a maybe an attitude shift.
Hmm.
It's maybe or probably for a lot of churches, it's just doing more of and more intentionally some of the things they're already doing of really looking at what are the resources we have locally, who are maybe people we can collaborate with. So not reinventing the wheel if you're trying to do a, food ministry or something like that, but seeing like who's already out there doing it. And can we
Hmm.
can we work with them? And just like, where do you take that spirit of, let's trust that there's enough.
Hmm.
Let's trust that we have so much of what we need already. And how do we bring that up out from the people? That feels to me like such a rich work for the church to do, such a creative, kind of life-giving thing to say like, hey, people are people are coming to us, and yes, they have huge needs and they're hungry and they're tired and the world is a lot right now.
Hmm.
And these people are so gifted. They're so, people have these rich life experiences. They have resources that are, I think, going untapped in a lot of ways by the church. I don't know if that's
Hmm.
that feels like a lot to take out of, this story, but
Yeah,
I think the connections are there.
I, absolutely, absolutely. I think that, particularly, when I look at this story, I see the disciples faced with a problem that felt too big.
Mm,
And Jesus kind of told them to start with what they had.
yeah,
Um, and as I work with so many pastors who are thinking about like, how do I get my church to think about climate change, and how do I get my church to like be more tuned to what's going on? It's like, start with what you have.
yeah,
Start with where you are and what you
yes,
have. What are the questions that people are asking in front of them? We're recording, we're a day or two removed from the skies of Pittsburgh being filled with smoke. And like, people are asking questions. People are asking questions about where the lettuce is coming from that that they're eating.
mhm,
People are asking questions about like, is every summer going to get hotter than the summer before? And so it's trying to think about like, okay, those are big questions. What do
mhm,
we what do we have? What resources do we have to start
mhm,
thinking about the ways that we are feeding ourselves and that we're taking care of each other? And I've seen so many churches this summer become cooling centers.
yeah,
I've seen so many churches this summer become shelters of all kinds, from the outside. I've seen a lot of churches that had, you know, produce in their little community gardens,
yeah,
letting people know, hey, we've got big lettuce. We've got, like, people are thinking about the little pieces they can do in their space, their place.
mhm.
Um, and they're saying,
Oh,
okay, maybe there's more abundance here than we realize.
yes, yeah, and those big problems, like you said. I mean, we might kind of go, "Oh, yeah, so you had to feed a few people." I mean, that was a lot of people.
It's a
That's a lot
lot
of
of people.
people. And, and again, it's a window. It's a way for us to start thinking about our own problems, our own challenges that we're facing and things we're trying to solve. And it does feel overwhelming. And I love what you said about, suddenly churches that maybe had never done this before are cooling centers or are growing some of their own vegetables to give away. Or it's actually one of the things that we've thought about that we have a step we haven't taken yet, but you reminded me of it, is we're thinking if we can take the next step from generating more power than we need to saving some of that, what we're looking at is what would it take to, to have battery storage,
Mm,
and we can be a cooling center even when the power's out other places.
mm,
So how do you take something you have and put it to that larger good?
mm,
And most of the time it doesn't seem like it takes as much. There's not as big a cost, I think, sometimes as people think there will be.
mm, mhm,
And the cost is, and I don't just mean financial cost, although that's part of it. But again, once you get started on something, it creates opportunities that then allow new things to happen. And so, if we had started 15 years ago saying, how do we get off grid and become a cooling center and become a resilience hub? And it would have been like, whoa, wait, I don't, no way. But, but when you just sort of take the next step that's in front of you to take, and then see what comes after that, it does break down these huge problems into something where it's like, we can't fix it probably on our own. Certainly we can't, but there is something we can do. And then that creates hope. I mean,
mm.
that's what I've seen. It feels so good just to park under that solar array. It's like, yes, it's shade and it gets me a few more steps in because it's not right by the church. It's just like every once in a while I have to remember to just look up and be like, look at that. That's so
Mm,
cool. And it's not patting yourself on the back to think like, oh, that feels good. That feels good. And if we can do this, and then another church can do this, and then another church is going to teach us how to do something else that's equally important, it will make change. It will have an impact. So, yeah, I mean, 5,000 plus the women and
bless
children.
the women and
Or,
children.
you how many people that was, we don't know. But yeah, good things beget more good things. But you've got to be willing to take that step. And like you said, start where you are, start with what you have. And you might be really surprised by how much more you have than you thought you did. And then maybe the other people who will partner with you and come alongside you and have their own resources. And I mean, I can think of dozens of examples where I've seen that in the church. It's one church kind of sticking their neck out a little bit and saying, yeah, we're going to try these things. And then another church saying, oh, well, we have some resource, we could give some money to that project, or, we'll share, some of the burden with you in some way. We'll send some people over, whatever it is. And, there are things I can think of we've done in Davis that start with one church. Sometimes it's us, sometimes it's somebody else. And before you know it, it's this big ecumenical project that's got
Mm.
people from all over doing the same thing. And it's wonderful.
Yeah. Before you know it, you've got baskets full, overflow.
Yeah, and I read somewhere that those are big baskets. I always imagine the little offering baskets we have or something. I read that, no, they're like baskets. They're like, yeah. I have to rethink how much was left over, and then what did they
Yeah.
do with food?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a question. This has been so good. I love this. I mean, I do. I love the story. I feel like it is one of those stories that we come back to. It's one of those stories. I mean, it's one of the only stories that's in all of the Gospels. So, like,
Yeah.
this clearly meant something to the early church. And I think that there's something about that. There's something about this story that just has this continuing, inspiring, hope-filling effect that I don't know that we can talk about it too much.
No, I 100%, and however you want to think about the miracle. I mean, we didn't even talk about communion, which is an Episcopalian trouble because I didn't, I didn't talk about the Eucharist. But, I think if nothing else, however you want to approach the miracle side of it, if maybe it pushes people into or nudges people into seeing the miraculous that's already with us and around us and in creation, however you understand that. It doesn't have to be something that goes against nature. That whole idea of either nothing is a miracle or everything is. Just just enjoy that. Like that,
Yeah.
that just makes it all so beautiful.
Yeah. That's a great place. That's a great place to end. Thank you so much, as always. I love talking to you. I love getting to do this with you, and just really appreciate your insight on this text.
Oh, I love being here. You always make me think of new things. And
Thank you for joining us for the Green Lectionary podcast. This episode was produced by Sprocket Wagner, and the song within these pages was written and produced by Christian McIver. You can learn more about this and other programs of Creation Justice Ministries at creationjustice.org.